Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You can take that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing our reading of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and we're on the 3rd canto, 28th chapter. We're all the way up to text number 9. Thank you. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, he should inhale very deeply, then hold the breath in and finally exhale. Or reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, then hold the breath outside and finally inhale. This is done so that the mind may become steady and free from external disturbances. Purport. These breathing exercises are performed to control the mind and fix it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayo. The devotee Ambarish Maharaj fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna 24 hours a day. The process of Krishna consciousness is to chant Hare Krishna and to hear the sound attentively so that the mind is fixed upon the transcendental vibration of Krishna's name, which is non-different from Krishna, the personality. The real purpose of controlling the mind by the prescribed method of clearing the passage of the life air is achieved immediately if one fixes his mind directly on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Hatha Yoga system or breathing system is especially recommended for those who are very absorbed in the concept of bodily existence. But one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. 3 different activities are recommended for clearing the passage of the breath: Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka. Inhaling the breath is called Puraka, sustaining it within is called Kumbhaka, and finally exhaling is called Rechaka. These recommended processes can also be performed in the reverse order. After exhaling, one can keep the air outside for some time and then inhale. The nerves through which inhalation and exhalation are conducted are technically called Ida and Pingala. The ultimate purpose of clearing the Ida and Pingala passages is to divert the mind from material enjoyment. As stated in Bhagavad-gītā, one's mind is his enemy, and one's mind is also his friend. Its position varies according to the different dealings of the living entity. If we divert our mind to thoughts of material enjoyment, then our mind becomes an enemy. And if we concentrate our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, then our mind is a friend. By the yoga system of Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka, or by directly fixing the mind on the sound vibration of Krishna or on the form of Krishna, the same purpose is achieved. In Bhagavad-gītā 8.8, it is said that one must practice the breathing exercise, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. By virtue of these processes of control, the mind cannot wander to external thoughts, Cetasa Nanyagamina. Thus one can fix his mind constantly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can attain Yati, him. Practicing the yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this age, and therefore Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtaniya Sadahari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name Krishna and the Supreme Person Krishna are non-different. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved. The yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from all mental disturbances, just as gold, when put into fire and fanned with air, becomes free from all impurities. Purport. This process of purifying the mind is also recommended by Lord Chaitanya. You got to fit the slot in then. It's like one of those SAT tests. Got to fit right in the groove, On the right side. Left and right go together. Right side's got a groove, left side goes inside. Simultaneous. Yeah, perfect. Where am I? This process of purifying the mind is also recommended by Lord Chaitanya. He says that one should chant Hare Krishna. He further says, Param Vichayate, all glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtan. All glories are given to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, because as soon as one begins this process of chanting, the mind becomes purified. Chaito Darpana Marjanam, by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one is cleansed of the dirt that accumulates in the mind. One can purify the mind either by the breathing process or by the chanting process. Just as one can purify gold by putting it in a fire and fanning it with a bellows, with the speed of smashing it in an anvil. 11. By practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his physiological condition. And by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. And by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association. And by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material attachment. Purport: according to Ayurvedic medicinal science, the three items, kapha, pitta, and vayu, phlegm, bile, and air, maintain the physiological condition of the body. Modern medical science does not accept this physiological analysis as valid, but the ancient Ayurvedic process of treatment is based upon these items. Ayurvedic treatment concerns itself with the cause of these three elements, which are mentioned in many places in the Bhagavatam as the basic conditions of the body. Here it is recommended that by practicing the breathing process of pranayama, one can be released from contamination created by the principal physiological elements. By concentrating the mind, one can become free from sinful activities, and by withdrawing the senses, one can free himself from material association. There's a little pop-up on this thing that's blocking my vision, if you don't mind. Ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuya yukalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga, but the practice of bhakti yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead, but one is practical and the others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is called samadhi. I think it's a very interesting statement here. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association, and by by concentrating the mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. More about that later. 12. When the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is clearly mentioned here that one has to meditate upon the expansion of Vishnu. The word kashtam refers to Paramatma, the expansion of Vishnu. Bhagavata refers to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Godhead is Krishna. From him comes the first expansion, Baladev. and from Baladev come Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and many other forms, followed by the Purusha avatars. As mentioned in the previous verses, Purusharchanam. This Purusha is represented as the Paramatma, or Supersoul. A description of the Supersoul upon whom one must meditate will be given in the following verses. In this verse, it is clearly stated that one must meditate by fixing the vision on the tip of the nose and concentrating one's mind on the Kala, or the plenary expansion of Vishnu. 13. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful, lotus-like countenance with ruddy eyes, like the interior of a lotus, and a swarthy body, like the petals of a blue lotus. He bears a conch, discus, and mace in 3 of his hands. Purport is definitely recommended herein that one concentrate his mind upon the form of Vishnu. There are 12 different forms of Vishnu which are described in teachings of Lord Chaitanya. One cannot concentrate his mind on anything void or impersonal. The mind should be fixed on the personal form of the Lord, whose attitude is cheerful, as described in this verse. Bhagavad-gītā states that meditation on the impersonal or void features is very troublesome to the meditator. Those who are attached to the impersonal or void features of meditation have to undergo a difficult process because we are not accustomed to concentrating our minds upon anything impersonal. Actually, such concentration is not even possible. Bhagavad-gītā also confirms that one should concentrate his mind on the Personality of Godhead. The color of the Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is described here as nīlotpala-dala. Nīlotpala-dala. That's something. Nīlotpala-dala. Where's Sudhira? Somebody can mark it. Nīlotpala-dala. Meaning that he is like that of a lotus flower with petals tinted blue and white. People always ask why Krishna is blue. The color of the Lord has not been imagined by an artist. It is described in authoritative scripture. In the Brahma-saṁhitā also, the color of Krishna's body is compared to that of a bluish cloud. The color of the Lord is not poetical imagination. There are authoritative descriptions in the Brahma-saṁhitā, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad-gītā, and many of the Purāṇas of the Lord's body, his weapons and all other paraphernalia. The Lord's appearance is described here as padma-garbhāruṇekṣaṇam. His eyes resemble the inside of a lotus flower, and in his 4 hands he holds the 4 symbols, conchshell, discus, mace, and lotus. Garbhāruṇekṣaṇam. 14. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast he bears the mark of Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustubha gem is suspended from his neck. Purport. The exact color of the garment of the Supreme Lord is described as saffron yellow, just like the pollen of a lotus flower. The Kaustubha gem hanging on his chest is also described. His neck is beautifully decorated with jewels and pearls. The Lord is full of 6 opulences, one of which is wealth. He is very richly dressed with valuable jewels, which are not visible within this material world. He also wears around his neck a garland of attractive sylvan flowers, and a swarm of bees, intoxicated by its delicious fragrance, hums about the garland. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown, and pairs of armlets, bracelets, and anklets. From this description, it appears that the flower garland of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fresh. Actually, in Vaikuntha, or in the spiritual sky, there is nothing but freshness. Even the flowers picked from the trees and plants remain fresh. for everything in the spiritual sky retains its originality and does not fade. The fragrance of the flowers picked from the trees and made into garlands does not fade, for both the trees and the flowers are spiritual. When the flower is taken from the tree, it remains the same. It does not lose its aroma. The bees are equally attracted to the flowers, whether they are on the garland or on the trees. The significance of spirituality is that everything is eternal and inexhaustible. Everything taken from everything remains everything. Give that to, what's his name on Traveling Sankirtan, RVC? Yeah, tell Parameshwar, you can tell them that when they come up to the... Everything taken from everything remains everything. Or, as has been stated, in the spiritual world, 1 minus 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 1 equals 1. The bees hum around the fresh flowers, and their sweet sound is enjoyed by the Lord. The Lord's bangles, necklace, crown, and anklets are all bedecked with invaluable jewels. Since the jewels and pearls are spiritual, there is no material calculation of their value. His loins and hips encircled by a girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladdens the eyes and souls of the devotees who behold him. The word darshaniyatmanam, which is used in this verse, means that the Lord is so beautiful that the devotee yogi does not wish to see anything else. His desire to see beautiful objects is completely satisfied by the sight of the Lord. In the material world, we want to see beauty, but the desire is never satisfied. Because of material contamination, all the propensities we feel in the material world are ever unsatisfied. But when our desires to see, hear, touch, etc. are dovetailed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are on the level of the topmost perfection. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form is so beautiful and pleasing to the heart of the devotee, he does not attract the impersonalists who want to meditate on his impersonal aspect. Such impersonal meditation is simply fruitless labor. The actual yogis, with half-closed eyes, fix on the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not upon anything void or impersonal. The Lord is eternally very beautiful, and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful and always eager to bestow his blessings upon his devotees. Purport: the word sarvaloka namaskritam means that he is worshipable by everyone on every planet. There are innumerable planets in the material world and innumerable planets in the spiritual world as well. On each planet there are innumerable inhabitants who worship the Lord, for the Lord is worshipable by all but the impersonalists. The Supreme Lord is very beautiful. The word shashvat is significant. It is not that he appears beautiful to the devotees, but is ultimately impersonal. Shashvat means ever existing. That beauty is not temporary, it is ever existing. He is always youthful. In the Brahma-saṁhitā 5.33 it is also stated Advaitam, Achutam, Anadim, Anantarupam, Adyam, Purāṇa Puruṣam, Nava Yauvanam cha. The original person is one without a second, yet he never appears old. He always appears as ever fresh as a blooming youth. The Lord's facial expression always indicates that he is ready to show favor and benediction to the devotees. For the non-devotees, however, he is silent. As stated in Bhagavad-gītā, although he acts equally to everyone, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and because all living entities are his sons, he is especially inclined to those engaged in devotional service. The same fact is confirmed here. He is always anxious to show favor to the devotees, just as the devotees are always eager to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is also very eager to bestow benediction upon the pure devotees. 18. The glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Purport. One has to fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. When one is accustomed to thinking of one of the innumerable forms of the Lord, Kṛṣṇa, Vishnu, Rama, Narayan, etc., he has reached the perfection of yoga. This is confirmed in the Brahma-saṁhitā. A person who has developed pure love for the Lord and whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of transcendental loving exchange always sees within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotees especially see the Lord in the beautiful blackish form of Shyamasundar. That is the perfection of yoga. This yoga system should be continued until the mind does not vacillate for a moment. Om Tad Vishno Paramam Param Sada Pashanti Suryaha. The form of Vishnu is the highest individuality and is always visible to sages and saintly persons. The same purpose is served when a devotee worships the form of the Lord in the temple. There is no difference between devotional service in the temple and meditation on the form of the Lord, since the form of the Lord is the same whether he appears within the mind or in some concrete element. There are 8 kinds of forms recommended for the devotees to see. The forms may be made out of sand, clay, wood, or stone. They may be contemplated within the mind or made of jewels, metal, or painted colors. But all the forms are of the same value. It is not that one who meditates on the form within the mind sees differently from one who worships the form in the temple. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolute, and there is therefore no difference between the two. The impersonalists who desire to disregard the eternal form of the Lord imagine some round figure. They especially prefer the Omkar, which also has form. In Bhagavad-gītā, it is stated that Omkar is the letter form of the Lord. Similarly, there are statue forms and painting forms of the Lord. Another significant word in this verse is punya shloka yashashkaram. The devotee is called punya shloka. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of the Lord, so one can become purified simply by chanting the name of a holy devotee. The pure devotee of the Lord and the Lord himself are non-different. It is sometimes feasible to chant the name of a holy devotee. This is a very sanctified process. Lord Chaitanya was once chanting the holy names of the gopis when his students criticized him. Why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why not Krishna? Lord Chaitanya was irritated by the criticism, and so there was some misunderstanding between him and his students. He wanted to chastise them for desiring to instruct him on the transcendental process of chanting. The beauty of the Lord is that the devotees who are connected with his activities are also glorified. Arjuna, Prahlad, Janak Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, and many other devotees were not even in the renounced order of life, but were householders. Some of them, such as Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, were born of demoniac families. Prahlad Maharaj's father was a demon, and Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. But still they have become famous because of their association with the Lord. Anyone who is eternally associated with the Lord is glorified with the Lord. The conclusion is that a perfect yogi should always be accustomed to seeing the form of the Lord, and unless the mind is fixed in that way, he should continue practicing yoga. And that brings us to the conclusion of this morning's reading of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We're going to take a break now for lunch, and we'll resume at 4 p.m. India time. If you're listening in from other places, please feel free to come back and join us. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, if you so desire, please give us a taste for seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. And please arrange that he never goes out of our vision. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Vanchakalpa Kripasinabheva Chapatitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Ananta Koti Vaishnaviniki Jai. Thank you everyone for coming. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay.